Hey guys, thanks for joining us for the CoNcast episode 3. Today we've got our usual crew of Tittles, me, and Laz, with DP joining us in just a couple seconds because he's running behind and is a jerk.
Yeah,
You should have just pasted him in and pretended. It would have been totally cool and sweet.
We can edit him.
Let's call him out.
Hello, DP. Hello, everybody. I am DP.
Let's just go on with the cast.
Yes. So, what media are we running today? I'll start, as we did last time. I actually started playing Walking Dead again, finally, last weekend, after taking about a month off from it, and it remains a grim and depressing game, and I am told that it only gets worse, so I'm very much looking forward to that. Other than that, if you're at the forums, you may have seen me talk about the Coursera website before, and I just kicked off a new class in that on gamification, and I'm really hoping that that leads us to some more fun gamified experience that we can bolt onto Con at some point in the near future.
Oh, you sound like some kind of Web 2.0 commercial, and I hate you.
I am Web 2.0.
Well, so zombie games are so 2009, man.
I know, and that's how long it takes me to play games. So...
True.
Yeah.
But he was also our only pilot.
How about you, Tittles? What are you playing? Because you say you're actually playing video
I've
games.
been playing a game other than Sonic 3, which I'm also still playing and editing, blah, blah, blah. I started playing BioShock Infinite. Very topical, right?
Oh.
That's
Have you-
quite good fun.
Have you fought a giant robot Lincoln yet?
No.
Darn.
Spoilers!
He's
Come
British. He may have trouble identifying a giant robot Lincoln unless it says it
Oh,
in the
right.
subtitles.
He'll have a
Yeah, I
beard
know.
and a very large, cylinder on his head.
Oh, yeah, it's a robot Linkin Park? I don't get it.
It's like,
No,
it's the headless body of Agnew.
It's the same as Evil Lincoln from Futurama.
Wow, that's two separate Futurama references.
And, you know,
You're
you
welcome.
wait
That's good
episodes
looking out.
for a Futurama reference and then two come all at once. Although we've probably already made several and I've forgotten.
Yeah.
No, I haven't played much of it yet. But it's good times. You might think it's a bizarre thing to say, but I got a slight Sands of Time vibe off it just because you've got a pretty girl hanging around who you're, interacting with and is generally making your journey pleasant and interesting.
So, Laz, what are you playing then?
Well, I'm finally off my Persona 4 kick, so I decided to play a different RPG from 2008. Settled down with some Tales of Vesperia for the 360. And I'm probably the only person here that's played a Tales game, but it's very much it's very much in the vein of the other ones. It's, a bunch of RPG stereotypes, but a fun battle system. And so far, it's pretty good. 5-6 hours in. Yeah, that's all I got.
Why the RPG names? Tell me, is this a Japanese RPG?
Of course it is. It has. It's full of anime stereotypes. It has made up words explaining magic. There's a naive princess and a talking dog and a little kid with a giant axe.
Before I went off, I just wanted to check, but I don't know anything about the game, but they all have approximately the same name.
Yes, they're all tales of, and then either a made up word or a vague noun like destiny or innocence.
You can pick them, can't you? You just hear the name and you can say JRPG.
Yeah, absolutely.
What was that Konami thing that was kind of half RPG and the other half totally bizarre randomness that I played years ago on the PC?
I need more help.
I've realised I've given you a lot to go on here.
Konami.
Well,
on
you
the
really
PC.
had me when you told me that you played it. Because I've been cataloging every game that you've played since about 2002.
Right.
All right, let's see if we can get DP to join us with his slow behind.
I feel like you might end up being one of those people who I can't stand who are totally against ebooks taking over everything.
Yes, I'm certain he is.
He's like, oh, but you don't get to feel the pages and the lovely binding and the smell of the book.
He's here.
You? Is that
Hey,
what you sound
I
like?
am one of those people.
That's what
I
we were
knew
talking
you
about.
would be. That's why I was mocking you.
So now we've got DP with us, finally, because he wanted to have food or something like that. So we can jump right
Stroking
into...
a book because he loves them.
Wow.
I need nourishment.
Yes, nourishment
Eating
and
a book.
books. Oh, God.
Eating a book.
So yeah, let's hit the first topic for today.
Woody flavor.
We're recording this just after April Fool's this year, and we wanted to get to this beforehand, but we ran out of time last time around. But now all of the gaming companies have gotten their April Fools out in the open, so we can talk about those a little bit. So let's go to Laz first, see what happened this year that made you smile in the realm of technology or gaming April Fools.
All right. Well, one of the higher profile ones that I was very much a fan of was YouTube's assertion that their entire website and video sharing has been a video sharing competition all along.
Yeah.
And they posted a long, detailed video with a number of, YouTube famous people about how they're going to shut down for 10 years and pick a winner, which I very much look forward to seeing 10 years from now, but I don't know if that's happening. But there's there was a number of gaming ones this year. Blizzard went slightly obscure and brought back a StarCraft 2 character from one of the betas that was removed from the final version of the game. And Guild Wars 2 made 3 full areas powered by a new server in 16-bit. It's... I don't know. I guess I wasn't that impressed with the gaming April Fool's jokes this year. So were there any that you in particularly like, Josh?
My favorite one, and this ties back a little bit to something I talked about in the very first podcast, I believe, and that was with Sega and Football Manager. They did an April Fool announcing Football Manager 1888, which was essentially Football Manager of today, but all in sepia, and all of the uniforms looked like they did 120 years ago, and all of the players had extremely English-sounding names. Absolutely fantastic. It's certainly something that somebody who is not a soccer fan, and especially not a Football Manager fan, would probably look at and say, yeah, that's pretty stupid. But for somebody like me, it definitely grabbed me and just made me laugh out loud. Yeah. Did you just look it up?
Yeah.
Yes, it's fantastic.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's very much what they looked like back then, I think.
You, the pro football fan, twigged right away. Because you watched the Barclays Premier League, right?
I talk like an American.
And you've been a fan of Liverpool since before they were popular, right? I just got to mock you every time you talk about being a football fan. Cause it's
well,
funny.
the beauty of it is that Liverpool have been so relatively poor for the last 4 or 5 years that soon it will be true that I was a fan of them before they were popular.
No, you started to be a fan after their popularity ended forever.
Hey, Tittles, if you're interested in, following the NFL, I might recommend the Detroit Lions.
Hey, now. They're gonna come around one of these. They
decades.
It's just basically
That's the key.
carrying on. It's just your normal habit of being very fond of things that have had their day, really. isn't
Like
it?
books.
Let's be honest. Yeah. And Fisherman's Horizon.
I can't deny any of these
All right.
comments.
So apparently today Tittles has chosen to be simply cruel to DP throughout the show.
And you, I've just been horrible to you. Don't think you're being left out.
Is this unusual? Is this like just today here? I mean, you're making it sound like this is an unusual thing.
This is how I work. This is what I bring to the show. Is that I hate you all and I call you out on being terrible.
I just remembered one other April Fool's thing that was delightfully not an April Fool's joke so much as an April Fool's announcement. Far Cry 3, one of the more well-reviewed games of 2012, announced an expansion called Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon on April Fool's Day, and it was alleged to star Michael Biehn, like the main character of Terminator, and The Abyss, and other 80s classics, and appeared to be an 80s-inspired, heavily neon sort of Blade Runner like action shoot 'em up game, but then everyone realized that those screenshots looked awfully like real screenshots, and a few days later it was revealed that that is a real game. That was just so ridiculous it seemed like an April Fool's joke.
Well, as I've been saying before, I'm very happy if the trend of zombie-themed DLC gets replaced with a trend of 80s-themed DLC. That's much more up my street. I'm all for that.
Well, before we bludgeon DP any further, do either of you other guys have any April Fool's pranks that stood out to you this year?
Well, they were all kind of boring this year.
Google knows was using, I guess.
There was Game of Thrones did one. I don't actually watch the show, but I just saw the one of my friends posted it, and I read through. It was very funny. I don't know whoever the short man is in that.
Tyrion
is the name.
Tyrion Lannister.
Is that the politically correct term? I thought it was
no, it's the
politically
no,
but it's definitely the one that's going into the final CoNcast.
The correct term is little person, but if you're describing the condition, it's usually called dwarfism.
Dwarfism? Oh, I thought you were
scientific word. Little person is the politically correct term.
It just sounds like you don't know he's got a condition.
That's why I have to explain it to him.
I was gonna say, I remember hearing that you weren't supposed to say midget, and so I was trying to think.
You just did. Thanks, buddy.
Well, no, that was
You're destroying our little person audience.
So that was a public service announcement there. But no, the April Fool's was that they were going to replace him with a different little person, and that they were going to. The reasons were silly. They were going to pay him. They were going to pay him like $8 million, which is like a full quarter of the year budget.
I thought you were going to say that would be what they'd pay a full-size person.
Oh no!
No, Peter Dinklage plays Tyrion in the show, and the joke was they were going to replace him with Vern Troyer.
Oh God!
Wait, no, not Vern Troyer. I'm sorry, Warwick Davis, the guy from
Willow.
Yeah, the guy from Willow,
and from everything else.
Actually, that wouldn't be that. I mean,
yeah, that's certainly a better choice than Vern Troyer, for God's sake.
The friend who posted it was actually like thought it was real. So,
well, that's the best kind when you can convince somebody that it is actually real.
It's all just lol. Here's a funny thing that's clearly not real.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, just because there's so many, there's so many April Fool's jokes. It's not like, you wake up in the morning, you turn on the computer, and you've already seen like 8 of them. So it's not like you're gonna get fooled. Like if you see news later in the day, you're gonna assume it's a joke,
Yeah, but I still think that the internet has made April Fools a lot more entertaining.
Oh yeah.
Because it's a good venue for it. That's relatively harmless.
There's still crafty ones can still catch you out if they're well enough done. The danger is if they're too well done, they catch too many people out. You could wipe half the stock value of your company if you're not careful.
Yeah.
You realise it's an April Fool's joke.
Or somebody else's company if you're really lucky.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I suppose that's what you could shoot for.
Well, and to that score, what did you guys think of what we did this year?
I loved the banners that Neil designed, personally.
I was just saying all the April Fool's jokes are just all lol, it's a funny thing, and they don't really try and catch you out, and that's what we did, so I think we've let ourselves down and we've let the internet down.
Touche. I'm going to tell Neil you said that. No, for those of you who...
it was funny enough, though.
For those of you who weren't around, we took our current theme, which we call Skyglade, which is very elegant and fairly sophisticated for a bunch of rubes like us to have made. And Neil...
Rubes have nothing to do with it.
Our staffer Neil took all of the images from that and redrew them all in Microsoft Paint. And for the better part of April Fool's Day, we replaced the entire site with his illustrations. and they were fantastic.
Classy illustrations they were.
Yeah, they were of the utmost quality. And for those of you guys who missed it, we are going to make that eventually a actual selectable skin on the site. So if you want to have that as your skin forever when you come to con, we will make that happen for you because we're accommodating like that.
Yeah.
I will be first in line to change my theme.
The Lavos one was great, with Lavos just sitting there with this big frowny face on.
No, the tactics front page has got to be my favourite. That
was the best.
As Neil
the
told me,
Homsar look on the character at the back was just beautiful.
What's a robot?
He'd kind of run out of energy at that point for drawing these, he said. So he went just as low impact as he possibly could.
I'm sorry, I wish he'd run out of energy sooner. The ones after he ran out of energy were even
the low impact ones had the most impact. Oh. Yeah, I was amused by it. I mean, I knew that something along that nature was coming, but it was still a pleasant surprise to see how hilarious it all turned out.
Yeah, we did keep it pretty well under wraps, I thought.
Part two actually didn't get me at first.
We actually, having had my awful rant, we did get a few people with part 2.
Yeah, and the backstory behind
I didn't think we were that clever.
Was while I thought that Neil's was absolutely hilarious, and I was very excited to do it, and we'd been planning it for something like 9 months, I didn't think it was cruel enough. So for a smaller sub-window of time during April Fool's Day, not only were you stuck with the MS Paint version of our website, we also changed the font around so that 90% of the text on the site showed up just as big black boxes. And that definitely caught some people out. There were several people commenting on Facebook saying, how did you guys do this? What have you done? Can't you fix it? And the feedback on that was that we caught out enough people where I actually shut that part off about an hour and a half earlier than I intended to because too many people were freaking out.
Well, I remember clicking on. I was going around looking at the various things that Neil had, Neil's various drawings, and kind of getting a kick out of them. And then I went to a different page, and all of a sudden it just changed right like that. And so I thought that it had actually been some sort of problem, like, I don't know, some type of error, something that arose because of tinkering around with the site skin in order to make Neil's drawings instead of the actual fan arts and screenshots.
Oh no, when we mess up things by tinkering, the errors are much more fatal.
Go big or go home, Josh. Final Fantasy V. Last Christmas.
Too soon?
Yes, always too soon. Yeah. So as the most experienced web developer working on Con, I managed to erase an entire data table that held the entire FF5 walkthrough, and we had to rebuild it from scratch after about 6 months of work on it.
Oh, God.
That happened right after Christmas 2010, I think.
Was it that long ago?
I'm glad I wasn't on chat for that. Wow.
Yeah, no,
No, it's Christmas. It was Christmas 2011, Josh.
That sounds more like it.
Or it was January.
I guess it would have had to have been. I'm sorry. Yes, definitely 2011. But still, too soon. Well, I don't want to take up too much time talking about the April Fool's stuff, but I don't know if we're going to be doing a podcast this time next year, and if we are, I don't know if we're going to be talking about this again next year. So while I have the opportunity, I desperately want to talk about the Caves of Narsh 2009.
Oh, the Legend of Moogle 30.
Yes, because this is my favorite thing ever that I think we've done on the site.
I was pumped for doing it, but nobody cared at the time, and it annoyed me. But it was a cool idea.
Yeah, and it worked out. It worked out so well, and we put so much effort into that. And I don't think I've ever actually talked about the entire thought process as to what happened, because when Laz and I were talking about this offline earlier today, I realized that in digging through the forums, there's no one place where we actually explained what happened, or why any of it happened, which made the prank awesome. And since a much smaller subset of our users are going to hear this podcast relative to actually have the opportunity to look at it on the site, I think this is a great place to talk about it, because then we can still leave that mystery on the site itself. But that prank was in 2009, but it started all the way back in 1997 when I first made the site. Because back then, the site was hosted on AOL on personal web space. You didn't have a whole lot of room. I already had a site on my own AOL names web space, and I wanted to make Caves of Narsh, so I needed a new AOL user to even host the site. For a while, I actually, because I was like 17 years old and the internet was new and these sorts of things weren't as stupid as they are in hindsight, I actually pretended that the person running Caves of Narsh was somebody completely different. Not just like kind of a pseudo alter ego of mine, but just a completely different person. And for a while, it was even credited on the site as being the site of Rangers51, which is me, and also Moogle30, who was also me.
For quite a long time.
Yeah.
The last traces of Moogle30 didn't go away until Com4 2001. So,
Yeah, the first real site.
Yeah, see, I didn't ever know that.
It was great.
Well,
It was news to me when Josh was telling me about it earlier.
So in thinking about that, and
That's because everybody who visited the site before then is dead.
But very few people actually did know that, and Tittles was one of them, and Tittles would often rib me about it for obvious reasons. So we conjured up this idea of making him come back. And the backstory of having him come back was that he would show up on April Fool's Day 2009, claim that he was all grown up now, and was a venture capitalist. And he had just bought the site off of me because he missed it, and he wanted to be in charge again. And as part of that, he did all sorts of shenanigans on the site. He created his own bot to rival Clem Hazard, and to even assimilate Clem Hazard.
Yeah.
And that triggered us to post all sorts of completely random stuff,
Loads
mostly quoted from Deus Ex.
It was a massive Deus Ex reference for any fans
just over
of
and over
Deus
and over
Ex
again.
who want to look that up.
Yeah, Clem Hazard, faux corrupting data in the forums. We would post to selected members, send them personal messages on the forums as Clem Hazard, saying that he's trying to maintain control of the site because he doesn't agree with what has happened. PMs from Stockbreak, who was Moogle30's version of Clem Hazard, saying how he was taking over. We were sending private messages on Facebook, which even I had forgotten about until a couple weeks ago when somebody mentioned one on the forums. Personal messages on Facebook saying, ignore what's going on at the forums. We've got this under control. It's going to be okay. And all of the shenanigans went on for at least 6 hours on April Fool's Day. Moogle30 changed.
Chunk of the day.
Yeah, and
you could keep checking in and see. I remember checking in periodically and watching it unfold. It was.
We were way committed to the bit, and I am very proud of us.
We did. We put so much effort into that.
We changed all of the section credits, so when you go to every game coverage's landing page, /FF1/FF7, Moogle30 changed all the site credits to read Moogle30.
But you're forgetting, or at least haven't mentioned yet, the biggest thing.
The best part.
Moogle30 actually did.
Yeah, well, by all means. This part was actually not my brainchild, and I was even a little bit resistant to it at first. So why don't you tell them the real payoff of that gag, Tittles?
Well, I don't know if this is the thing you're talking about, but he launched the Chrono Trigger section.
Well, of course that's the thing I'm talking about.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe you can talk about the epic Deus Ex reference where they merged together at the end. That was my favourite bit.
That was pretty cool.
Whatever.
But yeah, that's exactly right. Tittles, going back decades again, even before he was with Con, had
so many years
of creating a Chrono Trigger site that was kind of like Con, walkthroughs, data, all that stuff.
I was a young man.
I
was a young man then, and I had dreams and aspirations. And not only that, but there really wasn't much of a Chrono Trigger presence out there.
That was even pre-Compendium days.
I've said Compendium might have been around as a little minnow in its infancy in those days. It may not have been around at all, I forget. But there was very little out there for Chrono Trigger. And I was going to fill that void. And I did a whole page, and then I got bored and gave up.
And it actually only took you 8 years to get there.
8 years later. Someone else did it for me on a website my name's on.
You had always, kind of bugged me about doing that, especially once we started adding other games. Because, when we added Final Fantasy V.
And after I bugged you about FF7 and we got that one.
Yeah, that is true. And I was always resistant to it because it didn't have that Final Fantasy name. But then when they finally announced the Nintendo DS version, that was kind of the groundswell, and enough people came together and said, yeah, we got to do this, that I finally acquiesced.
Do this!
Yeah, so once the DS game came out, we put out coverage for that game, and we had it finished in 3 months. It was just breakneck speed, especially for us.
Yeah.
And we had a great walkthrough that Neil had written when he was in middle school.
Mm-hmm.
Unreal, just the way that it all kind of came together without even really meaning it to. But we decided to make that part of the April Fool's gag. So that was one of the things that Moogle30 did, was he launched this Chrono Trigger section. And everybody thought that it had to be a gag section because of all the other random stuff that was going on. And then people started poking through it. And they saw the depth of the walkthrough, and they saw how many pages we had dedicated to all this stuff. And it started to dawn on people that it was an actual real thing.
Yeah, especially since we had, as sort of one-off gags for April Fools in the past, were like, hey guys, we added an FF8 section, which was basically...
not only did we do that, we shut off the FF7 section on that same day.
Yeah, but like you said, people were like, he added so this is like that FF8 joke, har har har. And then they said, wait a second, there's more Chrono Trigger here than Final Fantasy 1. So, it was...
Of course there is.
But it was fun watching, like, you could even see it looking through that original Moogle30 forum, users going, like, first they're sort of in on the joke, and then you see them going, wait a second, there's a lot of Chrono Trigger here. It's really interesting to see it all unfold. I was going through the thread yesterday right after Josh had told me the whole story, and it holds up as a very interesting bit of COD history.
There's so much really fascinating stuff that we've done that nobody cares about. It's great.
Oh.
Okay.
Why am I? Yeah.
Let's wrap up today
What
by
have
talking
you
a little
become?
bit about some fairly recent news, if we can. A couple big things have come out recently. Biggest one, I think, at least in some circles, is the fact that they finally confirmed Bravely Default, flying fairy, functional feng shui.
Let me ask you this.
358 over 2.
Let me ask you this, Josh, aka Rangers 51. Are they going to localize the goddamn name? Because it's stupid.
I have something to say about that. I'm guessing yes, but somehow that name is served by Bravely Default's gameplay.
You really think? Wait,
is there a flying fairy? Is there at least one flying fairy?
I think they're going to change it. The storyline has fairies in it, and the basic battle system commands are brave and default. Because the way it goes,
they localize that a little bit.
Yeah, it's
Still though, like they've been talking about it so much, like it seems to me that switching the name now that it's already been going around so much, kind of seems.
No, they already did it with Aerith.
No, I mean they did that with The World Ends With You, and with all of Dragon Quest's subtitles, and a lot of things over the years. So I think that it would make sense to sort of to localize the name down a little bit, but it would make sense to maybe change the Brave and Default commands, and then
Bravely Flying Default Fairy. How's that?
They're probably just going to localize it into something. They're probably just going to call it Final Fantasy Mystic Quest 2 or something. I don't know.
I don't know, man. If you've seen trailers or gameplay videos, it looks like a better version of that Final Fantasy 3 localization for the DS. It has that around the same proportions of like enlarged heads, but it looks great, and it has it checks all those Final Fantasy boxes like class systems and airships.
Oh God, I'm not buying it then.
When I first started looking at the screenshots, and it wasn't just the character proportions, I actually felt like Final Fantasy IX. Like that's what came to mind.
No, I might think about buying it then.
I can very much see where you're coming from on that, DP.
I don't know much about the game beyond what I've seen in trailers and beyond what I've had what I've read about the combat. But I mean, this game's very acclaimed. People have good things to say about the combat and job system. So I think the name's a little silly, but if they change that, then I'll be that much more tempted to pick up a 3DS. Do any of the four of us own a 3DS?
No.
Yes.
No.
You do?
No, you
I
don't.
thought you just had a DS.
No,
Really,
I have a
Jules?
3DS.
Huh.
You've bought a system made in the last decade?
I was
He's
the
got
one
an
criticising you. You've bought a system made in the last decade, and you play games designed in the previous decade on it.
That's I cannot deny.
I have a 3DS. I played a bit of Mero 3D Land on it, and I hated it, and then I never touched it again. No, I did. I played New Super Mario Bros. 2 on it, and I enjoyed that, and then I never touched it again.
Well, there you go. You're looking for something new to put on it.
I think it's over
And-
there somewhere under a pile of Mega Drives.
I'm looking at a.
I think the last thing I've got to say about Bravely Default is that, aside from possibly the system that it's being released on, it sounds like exactly the kind of game that people have been whining for Squeenix to put out for a few years. You know, back to basics.
Well, I mean,
Kind of in the way that, a lot of people have a lot of good things to say about Final Fantasy Dimensions, and if it was on something other than a mobile platform, people would probably be really cheering it on. So I think this is the kind of thing that whatever they name it, people should really be open-minded to it and give it a chance and maybe shut their traps for a minute.
Yeah.
They don't have.
In their defense,
Wouldn't that
it's not
be?
like, you have to remember too that The World Ends With You is another game that sort of falls in a similar category where you've got, well, not going back to basics, but a very innovative, handheld title. So it's not like it's not like there's been a complete dearth, but.
I do have
they
to
came out-
hand it to Square. I'm very rude about Square these days, particularly their Japanese output, but The World Ends With You was actually a very good attempt to try something a bit different, and they did a good job with it. Because they tried something different with the gameplay for a change, not just trying to put different hats on people. Well, yeah, let me say that about Bravely Default, and I won't judge it too harshly until it's out and the verdict's in. But you say this is the kind of thing people have been asking for, but which people? Because there's a lot of people asking Square for a lot of different things.
Oh, no, people want exactly what they had 20 years ago, but also they want them to innovate for the future at the same time and sell it for $5.
They're not all the same people who are saying all these things, though, all the time. A lot of people who played stuff from 20 years ago want that experience back again, and they want it back in exactly the same way, and they're wrong to ask for that because they're idiots.
Because Piddles says so.
Yeah, I'm the supreme arbiter of who's right and wrong. Don't let me suggest that I'm not. But yeah,
Was that your actual point?
Well, no, I think we're sort of making this point of like, oh, this is what everybody's been clamoring for, and maybe it's what some people have been asking for, but maybe it's what
a vocal subset of Squeenix fans have been asking for.
I think
just
that's
like
the point to make. But
I mean,
I'm not saying it's not going to be good, but
yeah, I mean, obviously the problem that they're encountering, of course, is that it's not, precisely that it's not a case of all the fans are clamoring for one thing. All the fans are clamoring for completely different things, which is why you have, half of chat played Final Fantasy XIII, Final Fantasy XIII 2, and absolutely loved it, and the other half just loves nothing less than completely harassing it. So,
I'm in the half that didn't play it, but kind of wants to. And probably
that's very three good. Halves.
You know what we were just saying about they can only make games people like on platforms that nobody will play them on. I don't think that's necessarily a coincidence. I think when they're saying, right, Final Fantasy XIII, big blockbuster, they put too much pressure on themselves to make the next great Final Fantasy, whereas a lot of these mobile games are just people saying, let's make a good game.
Yeah,
I
and
think you've got a very good point there.
there's one more thing that I'd like to hit today, since we're going to probably run a little bit longer than usual. And it goes back a couple months to when Sony did their super amazing, not known at all reveal of the PS4.
Right.
And that's the fact that Squeenix showed up there and had jack to say.
Right.
And
They I'm sorry to cut you off, but I remember it was odd because Square Enix did their own press conference a few days before that one. And at that press conference, they're like, "Hey guys, Final Fantasy X HD still exists," and we news posted basically words to that effect. And then a couple days later, Sony has their big shindig, which actually does reveal a lot of new things. And Square Enix shows up for their 5 minutes, and they say, "Hey guys, please wait." So why did they?
And
So they basically had two. They had their own press conference, and then the Sony press conference, totally devoid of substance.
You have to remember about the thing, though. Sony's introducing PS4, but right now Square Enix is still heavily invested in the PS3. Like, all of their
and
titles...
there's no PS4 announcement for Final Fantasy
Yeah, like,
X.
none
HD.
at all.
But don't forget also, the whole PS4 announcement pretty much followed that theme of, hey guys, there's going to be a PlayStation 4, as if you didn't know. That's pretty much it. See you later.
They really should have brought back the Batarang for that
There were
press
a lot of
conference.
things. Oh, I remember that.
That's how a lot of these new console launches have been, though. They've announced the console, and then they're like, and yeah, there's like a Need for Speed game, and then an in-house game.
They announced a surprising number of new things at the Sony conference. I was honestly expecting less.
Square Enix, all their big titles right now are still stuck in the PS3 era. I mean, they'd announced 13.3, well, Lightning Returns, Final Fantasy 13, which is stuck in, well, not stuck in, but it's PS3. They've got Versus 13, which has been huge and in development since,
Do they?
since I was like still in middle school practically.
Final Fantasy 13 forever.
And then there's Realm Reborn, which is of course
A sequel to FF6.
A Realm Reborn, which is of course going to be not on the PS4 at least that we know now. So you've got 3 huge projects basically that are, I assume, taking up the majority of the company's resources, and none of them are set for PS4 at all.
The development side's resources in Japan. 3 massive projects that will all be outsold by anything Eidos divisions produce, let's not forget.
And we should all thank Eidos very much. But what I really wanted to ask in that context, and DP actually kind of hit it a little bit without, I think, meaning to, and that is, what is this PS4 Final Fantasy? Because they said, yep, there's going to be a Final Fantasy on PlayStation 4, and that's when they said, you just gotta wait.
Surprise!
So, I think that there's
Crystal
a few
Chronicles
options.
HD.
Oh no.
I'm pretty sure that won't show up anywhere but the Nintendo system, because Nintendo does have an HD console now, so that is well within the
It's
realm.
HD, guys, we
hoovering up
promise.
All HD and motion versions of previous generation titles by default.
Remember that thing that everyone did last generation except us? We're doing it now.
But
Hey guys, the future of video games is HD and huge controllers. Who'd have thought?
Coming out this September, Grand Theft Auto 3.
Yeah, well.
Well, the one thing that I'm wondering about FF Versus 13 is are we even know it's going to be part of 13 anymore? Because it's been so long that we've seen anything. I wouldn't be shocked by a total redesign.
Yeah, I mean, it could very well become 15. And that seems really weird, because if you are working in a game that was supposed to be part of the Fabula Nova Crystallis series,
wow, good
and
on you
suddenly it's
remembering the
not.
name.
Yeah, I had it written
no
down
kidding.
just for that purpose. If you're working from a game that was supposed to be of that series, then you would think that there would be some level of narrative hooks to the other games in that series. And it seems like it'd be really awkward to just suddenly make that game Final Fantasy 15.
You just rename everything, like the main character's brightening and stuff. It's fine. Nobody will ever
Just
know.
like for all the Game Boy Advanced editions of the earlier Final Fantasies. But I think that because from the very beginning they said that it wasn't. It was going to be they were going to share a mythos, whatever the heck that means. It wasn't.
And that,
from the very beginning, it wasn't an explicit thing.
Yeah, and it was very ill-defined, other than the fact that we were pretty certain that it wasn't going to have the characters of the Prime 13 series.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
other than the fact that
world.
they exist in this universe.
Well, you know what? They probably... Well, not probably. They may have started off and they've had two teams working on it in parallel, and the fact that they wanted to link them together may have been because they thought 13 was going to be this big, massive success and return to form that... I know a lot of you guys like it, but in terms of general public opinion, it wasn't. So it may be that they were sort of going down the route, say, okay, it's going to be tied in with 13, and then it didn't turn out to be as well received as they thought. Maybe what we're doing here is kind of good, and we don't want to tie it up with 13, or we want to rethink it a bit and go somewhere a bit different with it. In which case... may well end up being part of 15. I mean, there's nothing to say they can't have some kind of... Traditionally, the numbered fantasies have been set in different worlds, but there's nothing to say they couldn't have some kind of link there. I mean, don't forget, was it 10-2 decided to try and make out they were in the past of FF7?
The past of, Mm-hmm.
I mean, nobody liked FF7 like that
fact,
at all, but...
They ended up coming right out and saying that at some point,
I think in the Ultimania guides or whatever they're called, they pretty much said that was what they meant by it. But make your own mind up.
You could say, because remember Final Fantasy 13 Agito? I mean, remember what happened there?
That did become a completely separate game.
Final Fantasy Type O, and it was released, and we haven't gotten it over here, but it got, very good reviews.
Little fantastic. Sorry.
Very good reviews over in Japan, and on top of that, it didn't seem to. It says that it still uses Fabula Nova Crystallis mythology, but it doesn't seem to be hindered by the fact that it isn't explicitly connected anymore.
Yeah, that's an excellent point.
All right.
And that happened so long ago that I'd almost forgotten that
Agito
was supposed to be that game.
Yeah, was Dissidia also supposed to be part of that whole...
Dissidia, in fact, is, I think.
Is part of that whole Fabula Nova Crystallis movement, or whatever you want to call it.
Mythos. And maybe we're confused because they did just such a poor job of defining what that actually meant.
Yeah.
Actually, no. I think it actually goes back further than that, because you remember once upon a time they were heavily promoting the Final Fantasy VII brand and came out with Crisis Core and Dirge of Cerberus and Advent Children all in the same frame, and also they had the Evilise brand where they released War of the Lions and FF12, and that DS sequel to FF12, and probably something else I'm forgetting, all around the same time.
I believe the Tactics Advanced games both
Right. The first Tactics Advanced
as well.
game.
I don't know if the second one did, because I've never actually really looked at that, but I believe that they did tie that in.
So so that makes me wonder if if those FF7 games are successful and those Evilise games are successful, and if they're ready to put the FF13 world behind them after Lightning Returns, would FF15 be a new standalone game like most of the older games in the series, or are they going to try to have a large multi-game brand again? And could Versus 13 become a new game and be folded into that brand? There's a number of ways they could go with it, and I don't know
if they would try to fold it into a new brand. I mean, I think doing that would be fairly tacky,
Well, I think it would be a ballsy move at the very least, given the success that they've had with the previous ones, because it's not like 12 was a barn burner either.
Oh.
And when you consider 13, there probably are people that want to distance themselves from that 13 era as much as possible.
Yeah.
But at the same time, having those previous to, kind of sub-brands maybe makes it harder for them to have consumer confidence if they say, yep, this new one is going to be in this brand new sub-brand called Lord only knows. I'm sure it'd be nigh unpronounceable.
If they're paying attention to the feedback they're getting from their output, they should be finding what we've just been finding, that just making individual good games with good ideas that like they've been making on some of the, mobile platforms is the way to go. Stop trying to make this massive big thing out of everything. Stop trying to have brands and sub-brands and just make a damn game.
I think the smart way to do it would be to release a standalone game with a lot of marketing push behind it. And if it's really successful, then you can do a 15-2 or a 15 Advent Children or whatever you want. Because that's what happened with 7 and 10. Like following their success, then you have the brand develop.
If you've got more of a story to tell and it's turned out that the story you told is something people want to hear more of, make that decision then.
And see, that might be, just to defend them a little bit, that might be sort of their reasoning, like with the case of the Evilise Alliance and Final Fantasy VII.
That's what it's called, Evilise Alliance. I couldn't remember the name.
Yep. In the case of both of those, you have basically one game comes out, and then like, oh, well, that kind of worked, and there's kind of space for more to be told. And so then they started expanding on that. So I can see where they would want to say, okay, that kind of worked for us before. Maybe this time, let's, create that space for add-ons from the very start.
But I don't think it's something you can plan for.
I agree.
You're either going to have something that works that way, or you have something that doesn't. One thing I've often said of all kinds of games and films and literature is that I think stories and worlds often come up better and leave a better impression when they are incomplete. And when there's a sense that there's more that hasn't been told, but maybe that hasn't, not necessarily that someone's written them to achieve that, though. Do you know what I mean? Someone's had a really good idea, someone's got a really clear notion and a vision of a world, and they've just told you a story out of it.
Exactly.
But I don't think trying to design that necessarily works. It has to kind of come organically. To some extent, you can achieve it by you plan to create something and you don't end up creating everything you wanted to, and it leaves people wondering. But until you've left people wondering, that gap isn't there to fill. If you're deliberately leaving a hole that looks like something you can do in a prequel or sequel, I don't think you'll ever create that gap of people wanting to find out.
Yeah, there's an excellent author, actually, John McGavran, who says something that what you were saying just reminded me of, really, where he says that if you're making a real character, there should be questions. You shouldn't. It's impossible to completely define a real character, because a truly real character is something that is beyond full portrayal. And I think that the same would go for a plot or a world. And so I think that perfectly fits there, where if you've really got something good, if it's really authentic and real, there will be things that fall beyond the space given in a particular game. Yeah.
And you're not really going to know whether that's worth pursuing until you've got it out there, really. I think.
Yeah.
And the real question is, when, if ever, is FF Versus 13 gonna be out there? No one knows, and it's turning into the Japanese Duke Nukem Forever.
Will be. What it'll turn out, the name is more literal than you thought. And all these people who dislike Final Fantasy XIII, that is a guerrilla marketing campaign called Final Fantasy Versus XIII. Square deliberately set out to poison people against their own game as part of as part of a no publicity is bad publicity exercise. And so when they finally reveal that, you'll think, oh my god, they're brilliant. It was great, and they fooled us all.
So in that game, you're going to beat up the cast of Final Fantasy 13? It's like, it's you versus 13. You need to defeat all of them.
Yeah. I really thought it was canceled. I really thought it was non-existent anymore until what was it? Maybe a year ago when somebody was like, "Oh yeah, though we're still working on this. Believe us."
Well, I gotta say
they do that once a year or so.
Yeah. I was really on the fence as to what they might try to do with this. But having had this conversation, I think I'm actually convinced now that it probably is going to become 15. Based on the conversation that we just had. I really was on the fence about it until then. And that kind of ruins me because the other option I was going to throw on the table was that the Agnes Philosophy quote-unquote tech demo that they keep throwing around that was at E3 last year and that they announced at the PS4 announcement was developed on PS4 hardware, that it's completely possible that they're calling it a tech demo, but they might well think about making that a real game, and that could very easily be a Final Fantasy 15 as well. It doesn't look like a Final Fantasy 15 from what we've seen so far.
But maybe that's what they
did Final
need.
Fantasy 7? Did Final Fantasy 8?
Well, true, but let's look at that there. What's sort of the key thing it's a crystal, right? Doesn't she take a crystal? Isn't that what she's protecting?
I'm not completely sure I remember any of it anymore.
That's what I'm trying to think of right now.
To be honest, though, that is because they generate plot ideas on Tumblrs, and the last one pretty much only has crystal on it.
But, yes, okay, so I just watched the clip right now, and yes, it is a crystal that gets given to the runaway there. So, I guess the point I wanted to make was... Well, no, the point I wanted to make was Fabula Nova Crystallis tale, story of the new crystal. Crystal,
Did you actually just translate that from Latin?
Yes, it's not hard.
I hate your face.
but the idea being that this, if it does become a game, whether or not it's the next Final Fantasy, whether it's the Final Fantasy 15 or even a Final Fantasy 16, it's not necessarily beyond the pale of Fabula Nova Crystallis there, which would be very interesting.
They were planning on having it in that Fabula Nova Crystallis umbrella.
Yeah, I mean,
but isn't everything?
What does umbrella mean in Latin?
Umbrella sombrelli. What they're gonna do? Maybe they're finally going to do what I've been telling them to do and just retire the damn Final Fantasy brand, keep making stuff, but it's meaningless to call it Final Fantasy. It's just, it doesn't have the same...
this is getting into a conversation.
That's going to blow up. I think
we're
going to have to blow that one for another time.
No, here's one point, though.
I'm pretty sure people will still buy things that say Final Fantasy.
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah, it's not that people will not buy things because they say Final Fantasy, but I don't think you've got the same draw of people buying things just because they say Final Fantasy as you would have in the 90s. But here's a point I want to make. In the PlayStation 1 era, you had 3 main series Final Fantasy games on the PlayStation, along with all sorts of other output. And PS2 and PS3 haven't had as much. You had...
Well, I mean, I think that speaks more to how more expensive, and it's much more expensive and time-consuming and personnel-consuming to make a game nowadays because you have to render so many pixels.
You say that, and it's true, but don't forget the PS2 era. They managed to churn out 3 pretty tasty single-player GTAs, whereas Square, they managed 2 in a multiplayer game, but it's not quite. They did a lot of content,
let's remember. They did a lot of additional
Rockstar has multiple studios.
Yeah, but Rockstar North did all the main GTAs. Same studio. What I'm saying is...
And let's look at, the PS3, remember, you'll have 3 Lightning games, Final Fantasy 13, and that's if Versus doesn't ever come out for the PS3. If it does, then you've got those 4 plus Realm Reborn.
listen to the point I'm
Listen.
making. FF13 came out very, very, very late in the PS3 and the Xbox 360's life compared to any previous generation, and they would be smart to be getting something out sooner this time.
I do agree with that.
That's the only point I'm trying to make.
Okay. I would agree with that then. I think that they would be benefited by getting something out earlier in the console's life.
Because look at this, if you're saying they're going to get these 3 games or whatever out in the Lightning Universe, Nova,
Trilogy.
Tennis, Bananas, then if
Tennis
they are all
Bananas.
going to come out on the PS3, it's going to have been superseded before most of it comes out. And that's just not smart. FF12 came out pretty much in the dying era of that console generation. That's not a good place to be if you want to generate a lot of publicity and sales. So
True.
Sometimes
it would be
works
smart.
out.
It does.
That's another point
But
that really
whatever,
makes
it would
the
really
case.
make sense for them to get on the new console bandwagon quickly.
I think that really makes a case for Versus either being out soon or becoming 15 and being out soon. Because that seems like if they've been doing anything at all with it for all these years, they've got to be in a position where they could finish it and get it out fairly close to the start. And, hopefully we'll find out at E3.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Be as good
Final
as
Fantasy
good a time as ever.
versus insert number here, 2014.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy versus 15, because then that would just confuse everyone.
Final Fantasy versus the world.
Well, with all that said, I think we've put in a good day's work here. Fellows, do you agree?
Oh,
Well,
I believe so.
Well, we have. DP's only put in half a good day's work.
yeah, you're just going to have to
Oh.
talk for yourself for another half hour after we've gone about stuff and we'll splice it in.
Also, we won't record it, so have fun with
Just
that.
write
Great.
it in one of your books.
Yeah,
with your
maybe you
quill
can read
pen.
for us, DP.
Hey now.
Maybe you can read us a story, and we'll all be really entertained.
Yeah, you can be like Andy Kaufman, just like recite The Great Gatsby.
I'm pretty sure
Maybe
that
I
DP cannot be like Andy Kaufman.
I don't even know who Andy Kaufman is.
Oh my God, kick-
he's so young.
Kick him off the cast now.
And so, in conclusion, I was right and DP was wrong. Agreed?
What?
Yes, and he was also late, and he is also just not awesome.
I agreed with you half the time, Tettles.
Well, the other half you were wrong.
Trust me, after like 13 years of dealing with him, agreement is not enough to save you.
Oh, gosh.
I think DP would probably like to be the first to say goodbye this week so he can get
Yeah.
out from under the hailstorm that has been abusing him for the last hour.
It's
Tell
been,
them on time next time and you'll be fine. Well,
I was hungry. Well, it's been a very entertaining and
Educational?
painful and educational evening for me. So, goodbye, everyone.
Oh, am I next? Okay.
And sure.
Sure.
Awesome. Well, been nice talking with you guys for the past couple hours. That hopefully gets cut down to something more reasonable.
bye, everybody. See you soon. Next time there'll be puppets.
But they won't be able to see. Oh, I get it. You're being avant-garde.
Yeah, man. I'm the new Andy Kaufman.
I love you all, and I miss you terribly when we're not recording podcasts. And I want each and every one of you individually to know that.
God.
And to smile silently when you think about it.
As opposed to those loud smilers.
And that part I am absolutely not leaving on the cutting room floor.
That wasn't Winger. That was
Oh.
really great.
I feel uncomfortable now.
I feel violated.
Yeah, you went from being Winger to being Chang.
Yes! Like good Chang, old Chang.
Let's never speak of that again. Thanks for listening to CoNcast Episode 3. We have no idea why you listen to CoNcast Episode 3, but we're pleased you're broken enough to find us entertaining. Music this week was Songo de Chocobo from Square's Generation N album, again. Victory Fanfare from Final Fantasy II on the NES, and Crossing Those Hills from Final Fantasy IX. Next time, a spirited discussion on contraflow cycle lanes and Italians. Thanks for listening.